Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step out of the hardware store and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It's a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. I'm on my way home from my errands, and I thought I would talk to you about some games. I went to the hardware store to get something because I remember this morning going like, oh, I ought to take a walk today, and that's something I should get from the hardware store, so I'll just go there. And I could not remember what I needed from the hardware store. It's fun getting old, folks. So anyway, thought I would talk on my way home about 3 new games I played recently. That's right, it's time for another Board Game Espresso triple shot. That'd be a latte, wouldn't it? The steaming of the milk, whatever. It's coffee sounds. For those of you new to the podcast, Board Game Espresso is an episode in which triple shot, is which I quickly, espresso, talk about 3 games that I played recently for the first time. That's the triple shot part. And usually 1 game that I dusted off. The idea is just to give you a little taste of the game. I've only played them once. It's the first impressions discussion, and it's a delight. So that's what I'll be talking about today. The first of the 3 games that I want to talk about is Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Scrawlers, Heroes of Undermountain. This game was designed by Vangelis Bagiartakis and Konstantinos Karagiannis. The artist is Anthony Cornoyer, and WizKids is the publisher. Vangelis Bagiartakis is the designer behind Hegemony most recently, but also Kitchen Rush and Dice Hospital and a number of other games. So well-established designer. This game is a light, sort of very quick game, plays in like 10 minutes or something. And the idea is that you are racing through a dungeon trying to get as much loot as you can before your friends get their loot. You each have a sheet in front of you that shows the dungeon or a dry erase board, and you have a dry erase marker. And the idea is that you are racing through the dungeon by drawing a line. You put your dry erase pen down at the beginning of the maze, and then you have to scrawl your way through the dungeon. You're not allowed to touch the walls, so you have to. The dungeon is a maze, of course. And when you get to a room that has something in it, you have to solve that problem in some way. So like if there's a monster in it, you have to scribble out the monster. If there's a piece of treasure in it, you have to circle the piece of treasure. There's a bunch of different things you have to do with your marker, sort of maintaining contact with the paper, and you're allowed to cross over your line and all of that. It's not super picky, but the whole thing is you have to do it quickly and without touching the wall as you're drawing. So once you've, like, let's say you go into, your pen goes into a room and there's a couple goblins in there, you have to scribble them out before you can move on to the next room. And the whole idea is that you're supposed to get to a certain place, and the person who gets there first wins, or stops the game, and then everyone adds up their points. So it's a weird little fun goof of a game. It's silly, it's fun, it's easy to play. It comes with, I think, 4 different maps. So there's lots of different, maybe 8 actually. Maybe it's 4 double-sided map sheets, so it's 8 maps, something like that. It's a bunch, enough that you could play a few times and not get sick of it because it's the same thing over and over again. I mean, it's a relatively limited experience in terms of what you're doing, but it's pretty interesting and frankly pretty different than almost everything else I've played recently. I can't think of another real-time maze solving game, which competitive maze solving is kind of if you were going to pitch a log line of this with mini games. Yeah, it was a fun time. If you get a chance to try it, well worth it. That's Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Scrawlers. The next game I want to talk about is called Cosmocotopus. Cosmocotopus was a game that we acquired at the holidays. It actually was my mother-in-law's Christmas gift from the Christmas Game Master. I think I've shared that family tradition with you. Cosmocotopus was designed by Henry Audubon, who's best known for Parks. The designer, or the artist, was George Destrutopoulos, and the publisher is Paper Fort Games. Lucky Duck is the sort of most well-known of the distributors for the game. Cosmocotopus is a relatively simple engine builder in which you are acquiring cards of different types, and those cards of different types give you bonuses or accelerators that allow you to acquire tentacles. And the idea is that there is a The great inky one is a big plastic octopus that is in the deep void, and you are one of its adherents trying to summon it to your planet. So over the course of the game, you are playing cards and getting cards with the idea of spending resources to put more cards into play, and over time those cards will acquire you tentacles, and once you get 8 tentacles, you summon the great inky one and you win. In gameplay, there's a lot of overlap thematically with, or not thematically, but sort of the base bones of it. If you follow its linear tree back, you're going to something like Splendor, where you have a market of things, and at the beginning you don't have much in the way of being able to do it. You might take turns where you're just getting resources, but as the game goes along, you acquire more and more of those resources, and pretty soon you can start buying cards that give you free resources and make it easier to buy more cards later. When we played this, we found there was a tipping point, not entirely unlike Century Golem Edition, where you have to shift from building your engine to acquiring points. And if you wait too long to do that shift, other people will start getting points before you, and it'll be hard to catch up. Now, we only played this once. I thought it was fun, but it ran really long. I think it's just a combination of playing with a full player count and having people who are a little indecisive. But it feels like a game that should take less than an hour, and I think it took us closer to 2 on the first play. But it's a pretty simple, really fun game, excellent graphic design, fun little components. Cosmocotopus is a cute little game that you definitely should check out if you get a chance, especially if you like stuff like Gizmos or Splendor. Cosmocotopus is in the similar boat similar vein in terms of building an engine of things that will help you get things faster and trying to accumulate stuff to win. Plus it comes with little plastic tentacles, so that's fun. That's Cosmocotopus. It was new last year at Gen Con, I believe. All right, next up, I want to talk about a game I dusted off. In January, I did get the opportunity to play 2 board games with my board game class. I was going to play 3, but the second Friday of my January that I was teaching my zombie class, not board game class. The second Friday of the January where I was teaching my zombie class, there was a huge blizzard coming in, and it was going to be a real pain in the butt to get home. And so I made a deal with my family, or I sort of agreed I would not stay late to play board games on the day of the big blizzard. So I talked with my students and said, hey, we're not going to stay late for board games today. So that's what that was. So we only played games 2 weeks instead of all 3. So in the second week in the third week, we played City of Horror. Now, City of Horror is if I were to line up all the games I own and put them in order of how mean the game wants you to be to other players, City of Horror would be right near the end, right near the mean side of that scale. Because while there are some games that are directly confrontational, I don't generally consider those mean games. Something like Nexus Ops, which is just, it's a war game, right? You and I are competing, we're attacking each other. I don't generally consider that mean. It is aggressive, certainly, but not mean, right? We're actively attacking each other. Mean games are ones where you're like manipulating people and betraying them and stuff, and City of Horror is the ultimate one of those that isn't going to take you 8 hours. It's like a 90-minute or 60-minute to 90-minute experience. In City of Horror, you play a group of humans that are trapped in a city where zombies are showing up, and you have to try to get as many of your humans through the night as you can. There is a zombie vaccination that you can take that will prevent you from becoming a zombie, or there's a cure or whatever. And there's a helicopter coming in the morning. So if you have a human that's alive and they have one of the vaccines, they can get antidote. That's what's called antidote. Then they can get on the helicopter. So you have to keep your humans alive through the night and get them antidotes. Now the tricky part is each building has a limit to how many zombies can be outside. There are several buildings in the city. In each round, you have to move one of your people from one building to another. And if you ever try to move to a building that's full, then your character ends up in the middle of the city, open to being predated on by zombies. And basically just and then more and more zombies show up. So if outside of a building is full, then the zombies threaten to break in. The only way to pacify them is to throw someone in the building into the street to be eaten by zombies. And the way that works is each human in the building gets to vote. So as a player, you control 2 or 3 humans. So you could have both your humans in the same building and have them gang up on the person that's there. But if that person leaves, then one of your humans has to be thrown out. It is, like I said, it's a really mean game narratively, and it results in players having to be really vicious with each other. The great part is that at the beginning you have these cards, and the cards help you fend off the zombies and stuff. But the cards, you don't get more cards. They're a very limited resource. So at the beginning, everybody's got a bunch, and you feel sort of flush, and you're willing to share them and help each other out. But by like round 3 or 4, things are getting nasty. So it's a fun game, really enjoyable, and fits the zombie theme really well. But yeah, I don't play it that often. It did technically become dusty this year because the last time I played it was 1 year and 5 days before I played it this time. And that's the rule. A game is dusty if you haven't played it in a year. So that City of Horror, designed by Nicholas Normandin. The artist is Miguel Coimbra, and it was produced by Repulse Productions. I will say one thing, this is a very French-feeling game in terms of the art, particularly from the 2000s. I think this game is, 2012. So it reflects that a little bit. The characters are a little bit exaggeratedly drawn. They're sort of French versions of American stereotypes. And there are a couple images, particularly there's one character called the Blonde that is not great. It's pretty misogynist in its setup. But that's City of Horror. All right, the last game that I want to talk about that was new to me is Star Wars, the deck building game. This was a gift from my friend Chris. Hi, Chris. Thank you for Star Wars, the deck building game. It is a lot of fun. This is a game from Fantasy Flight Games, the people who own the Star Wars license. And this one is a really tight little deck building game where you have money and attack power, and you spend that to do stuff, and then you discard your cards, draw new cards out of your draw pile. When your draw pile is done, you refresh. It's probably built on the Ascension model more than Dominion, in that you don't have a market of cards to buy from, you have a river of cards. The clever thing about this is Star Wars, the deck building game, is a duel. One player plays the Rebellion and the forces of good. The other player plays the Empire and the forces of evil, or the dark side of the Force. And when the cards come out into the river, they can be purchased by one or the other of the players. However, you can also attack them for their purchase value. So, you know, if a card costs 4 to buy, or I think it's your purchase value. It was a month ago that I played it. Now I can't recall if it's your purchase value or its life value. I think it's purchase. But you can attack it in the market to keep the other person from getting it. So if a really good card comes out, instead of attacking my opponent, I could just attack the card in the market to kill it before they get a chance to buy it on their turn. But otherwise, the sort of give and take works very much like Star Realms. It's probably the closest analog. That you have this engine you're building up, and you have bases you're defending, and if your opponent wipes out all your stuff, you lose. And that's pretty much how Star Wars, the deck building game, works. It's very simple if you've played other games like that. If you haven't, this is a great way to get into the deck building genre. I don't have a lot more to say about it because I've only played it the once so far. And while I enjoyed it, and certainly will play it again from time to time, it's not super deep in terms of, doesn't feel super deep in terms of like Res Arcana, which feels like a similar weight, has a lot more depth than this game seems to. But I could be wrong. But also, if they release an expansion, I'll probably get it because it's a good little game, and it'd be fun to have more cards. So that's Star Wars, the deck building game. I'm glad to have it. Thanks, Chris, for a nice gift. And that brings me to the end of this Board Game Espresso episode. What games have you been playing lately? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. You can always send me a message. Wombat929 is my username there, and that's the fastest way to get a hold of me. So, thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye. This game and others goes, damn it, is this street cleaner following me? He is. Hold on.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.